Hi ladies and gentlemen, this is your risk management broadcast which will help you with your quiz 4 on risk management, and I'm just going to briefly explain to you some concepts of insurance. Now when we talk about personal risk management, we actually just refer to insurance in general, and insurance is underlined by the whole principle of risk. So your client, as the insured, will approach an insurance company to insure him against a certain event, and the insurance company will assess the type of risk that the client is, and the higher the risk he is, the higher his premiums will be. And that's more or less the principle of insurance. Of course, insurance law then applies. You will see in your textbooks the common law, certain legislation, and also the Constitution. And then the law of contract also applies, as that policy that the client takes out is a contract. So there's certain essentialia or essential elements of that contract that must apply, that we will look at just now. The different parties to the insurance contract is then the insurer, that is the insurance company that undertakes the risk of the client. We have the life insured, and this is the person that has to die for the proceeds to pay out. The policy holder is the person taking out the policy. We've got the premium payer, that's the person paying the monthly premium on that policy. And then, of course, these three persons may also be one and the same, but they may also be separate persons. Then we've got the third party, where this person will walk away with the proceeds at the end of the day. So if there is the policy has been ceded to a cessionary, then the cessionary will at the end of the day receive the proceeds. The same goes for a named beneficiary on the policy. So for instance, the life insured spouse is named as a beneficiary, and then that person will receive the benefits. It can also happen if the life insured is insolvent, then his estate will also be a third party. The two main forms of insurance is indemnity and capital insurance, and there's an important distinction between the two. The first, indemnity insurance, is your shorter insurance, and capital insurance refers to your long-term insurance, for example, life insurance. Now, the object of insurance for short term is patrimonial, so you will need to prove your actual financial loss, where with capital insurance it is non-patrimonial loss, so the loss of a limb or loss of life, etc. The nature of compensation, the actual loss that's going to be covered by this type of insurance, where with your long-term insurance it is more as monetary satisfaction, because you can't actually prove the financial loss you suffered because of the impairment or loss of a life that you suffered. The nature of insurable interest, there's a limited financial interest in short-term insurance, but an unlimited interest in your own and your spouse's life for capital insurance. And the time when the insurable interest is required is important to distinguish between the two. For short-term insurance, it must exist at the time of the loss, where with your long-term insurance, it is the time when you took out the policy. You must prove that sufficient interest that was applicable. Now, this you will also find in estate planning part of the module, but also just take note that for insurance purposes, that life insurance property is deemed property in a deceased estate, and the question is not whether or not the deceased owned the policy, as long as the policy was on his life, it will be deemed to be property in his estate. Now, for indemnity insurance, we talk about short-term insurance, and in short-term insurance, remember, it is only your actual financial loss that will be compensated. So if we look at the following statements or principles here, it would not help you to be overinsured, because it will only be your actual financial loss that will be covered. It will also not help you to double insure at two different insurance companies. You will only be paid out your actual financial loss that you suffered. Also, you can't under-insure an asset and expect to be compensated for your actual loss. Then there will be a formula that will be applied to see what the amount will be that's going to be compensated. And it may be less than your actual financial loss that you suffered. The insurance company can offer to replace or repair that asset. The principle of subrogation, that will be, for instance, where someone backed into my car, my insurance company fixed the car, so they compensated me for my actual financial loss. I have a claim against that person that backed into my car, but that claim will then be transferred to my insurance company, and my insurance company can claim from that person then the actual loss that he already compensated to me. And then salvage, just if they repaired or replaced my car, they can also take that old asset as their property, and it will not stay your property. Another important principle in insurance is the principle of insurable interest. That is very important, as you need to prove that you have an insurable interest to have a valid insurance contract. Now, this will be, for example, that you cannot gamble on someone's life, and that is prohibited. So you can't go to the nearest hospital, see who's on their deathbed, and quickly take out a policy on that person's life to get the policy proceeds as quickly as possible. And that will be to gamble with someone's life. So you actually need to prove that you have an interest in that person's life to be able to take out a life insurance policy on their life. So a very important principle. Another important one is beneficiary nominations. That will be where the policyholder names a beneficiary to receive the proceeds at the policyholder's or the life insured's death. You will see in your textbooks a lot of things that you need to know there, so just go through that. The basics is just that it is regarded then as a contract in favor of a third party. That means that that spouse must accept the benefits at the life insured's death. The life insured can still revoke that nomination at any time prior to his death. There are certain things then, just that if the beneficiary dies before the life insured, then whether he can still claim that proceeds or not, and also where there is then that beneficiary becomes insolvent, the principle is that that beneficiary does not have a right to claim that benefit, so it will not be regarded as his property before the life insured's death. And then also where there's a cession and a beneficiary nomination on one policy, for instance, the question is who will receive the benefits. And the answer more or less there is that the cessionary will have the first right to claim the proceeds. And for instance, if it is a cession where the policy is ceded for security purposes, if that amount has been paid out to the session. Anything that is left on that policy may still go to the beneficiary then. And then also sessions, you get absolute session and a session for security. So for an absolute session, all rights and obligations of that policy will go to the cessionary, and if it's only for security, it will only be until that debt was repaid, and then the rest, if there's anything left, reverts back then to that policyholder. In terms of the Long-Term Insurance Act, there's a couple of important principles there. You will see a couple of definitions that you need to know, and then a couple of sections that's important. Section 44 is on free choice. That just means that you can't force your client to take out a new policy when he needs to cede a policy for security. So he has the choice to use an existing one or a new one or a combination. Section 51 is on the suspension of the benefits if you did not pay the premiums. So just check there. Section 52 is for how long that policy will remain in force if the premiums were not paid. So just check there if it's a monthly policy, after 15 days, if more 30 days, and then also very important, section 52.2 that stipulates a formula what happens after that and what will happen to the surrender value of that policy. Section 55 limits the amount of life cover that you can take out on the life of a minor. So between unborns and up until the age of 6, you can only take cover up to 10,000 Rand, and between 6 years and 14 years of age, you can take up life cover of 30,000 Rand. Another important one is section 63, the protection of the policy benefits, how safe your policy will be from creditors. If that policy has been in force for at least 3 years, or you bought assets with the benefits of that policy 5 years prior to that event, your policy will be protected. Then just the important question whether if the policy is not protected, so it is within the first 3 years of taking out that policy, and you have a beneficiary nomination on that policy, whether that policy will then be safe. And just go and check your textbook. In terms of the case Pieterse versus Schroesby, it was held that that beneficiary can still accept those benefits, so that policy will also be protected still from your creditors. Of course, then if they can prove that you took out that policy with the intention to defraud the creditors, that will not be valid. And then section 54, the restrictions on certain policies. There's a lot on that you need to know. The policy has to be in effect for 5 years before you can claim benefits from that, or be under consideration for the surrender value and so on. But there are certain exemptions that apply, certain limitations on that, where you can extend that period and limit the amount and so on. So just check that in your textbooks as well. Another important principle is in terms of section 29A3 of the Income Tax Act, not the Long-Term Insurance Act, which stipulates how the long-term insurance policies must be taxed. And in terms of this section, the insurer must establish 5 funds. It was 4 funds up until last year, and these funds will then be taxed differently. So the first one is the untaxed policyholder fund, which is assets in respect of pension fund, provident fund, retirement annuity fund, and the benefit fund, where the owner of the policy is a person where any amount of income would be exempt in terms of Section 10, any annuity contract entered into by the insurer in respect of which annuities are being paid will be exempt from income and capital gains tax. The second fund is the individual policyholder fund, where the assets in respect of policies where the owner is a person other than a company, and which does not fall into the above mentioned untaxed policyholder fund. The income tax will be at 30% and the capital gains tax at 12%. Thirdly, the company policyholder fund, assets in respect of policies where the owner is a company. There the income tax will be taxed at 28% and the capital gains tax at 22.4%. The risk policy fund is then the new fund, which will be taxed at 28%, and the fifth fund is the corporate fund, where it is everything that is not mentioned above, and the income tax will be 28% and the capital gains tax at 22.4%. Now, also very important, if the policies are held by a trust or more than one owner of the policy, the following will apply. If all the trust beneficiaries or owners are funds, persons or bodies exempt from tax under Section 10, the owner is deemed as such a fund and will be then exempt from tax. If this is not applicable and all the beneficiaries of the trust or owners are persons other than a company, the owner is deemed to be a person other than a company, and that will mean that it will be taxed at 30% income tax and capital gains tax at 12%. Where neither of these will apply, the owner is deemed to be a company, and that will mean that the income tax will be 28% and capital gains tax 22.4%. I received some of this information from Carl Miller, that's a financial advisor at Old Mutual, but you can also go and try to find some information on these 5 funds and the trusts fund on Treasury's website. Also take note of the policyholder protection rules that have mostly been included now in the FICE Act. That's very important still for the day-to-day business of an insurance company. The policy benefits for disability income cover and critical illness benefits, especially the tax consequences thereof. The benefits that you receive from this policy will be tax-free, but not the premiums that you paid in respect of these policies. Lastly, we just have the short-term insurance, and you will find in your textbook all the definitions and all the different types of short-term insurance policies that you can go through. That's it for these slides. For the quiz, I can just say that you can go and have a look at your study guides or study material to also go and find answers to some of the quiz questions that you may not find in your textbook, and go make sure that you understand beneficiary nominations and the rights to the policy proceeds that the beneficiaries may or may not have. That is also important for the quiz. But with that, I'm sure that you will be fine and can answer all the questions to the quiz. Good luck.